The Russian team is so strong. Who could that be?
I think those will be some of the younger Russian players. There's dozens of grandmasters around the age of Artemiev. That might be Alexei Sarana, a few other young guys there.
But here we go.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the game, it has been a Queen's Gambit. White offering a pawn at an early stage, and Black has so far declined that gambit. He'll sense it, and he'll try and take advantage. OK, meanwhile, Black just developing his knight. So not that aggressive from Black so far. Still pretty solid, cagey stuff. Where will he try and imbalance the position?
I was just going to say, do you think he will go for the kind of Levon-Aronian approach, develop his dark squared bishop out and pin the knight? But he says no. Instead, he develops his knight.
Favourite of Vladimir Kramnik, former world champion, and it is quite solid. So, OK, we see a trade of pawns, Magnus bringing his queen out. So it is very much going to transpose to a variation of the Queen's Gambit to go over to the right side. And, OK, just a solid pawn push, fortifying the centre. White's bishop does indeed leap out, creating a slightly annoying pin. White's dark square bishop there, just putting some pressure on the Black knight. And I expect Artemiev to develop his dark square bishop as well. You've had similar positions to this one throughout your career, Jovanka?
Many times. And, well, I kind of like these positions for Black. I mean, it's just all about picking your plan and running with it. And when I'm talking about plan, the main issue in this position for the Black pieces is actually how they're going to develop their light square bishop, which, as you can see, is left there at home, and it's stuck there for a while. And here you go. You see, Artemiev has decided to go with his knight to the edge of the board in order to trade off a set of bishops. And now, after bishop takes bishop, White chooses his poison, and he decides to go for an aggressive approach and castle to the left.
With this decision that he is in that mood for a fight, he doesn't just want to play solid and defend his lead here. He wants to profit from the white pieces and, OK, bringing his bishop out now. And because you know that if you castle to the opposite flank, you'll get attacked, the other plan is to actually copy White and try to castle on this long side, castle on the left. And we might well see Artemiev do that. First, he brought a bishop out again, trying to create a pin. Jovanka highlighted Black's light squared bishop as a problem piece, stuck behind its own pawn, so it might trade itself off later for a knight. Very well known, but Artemiev, he has to commit. OK, first, he pushes a pawn. The idea is to blunt the diagonal of the white bishop and of the white queen, remember, lining up, and he's still keeping Magnus guessing.
Actually, to tuck the rook that is sitting on the d1 square and move it to the c1 square. OK, but we have seen the pawn attacking the bishop, and now the bishop.
Trade.
Yep, now there is a trade. Castling to the long side. Yes, he does that, because there were other options. That is sitting on c3, it will go to the edge of the board. OK, and the queen actually steps forward, but there's still very much the idea of the rook tucking itself to the c1 square, lining up against the Black king, and all these potential knight jumps.
And Artemiev, he just has to choose here. Both of those moves are completely fine. He does eventually move his king closer to that kind of safe haven in the corner of the board, but it cost him a lot of time for a very obvious move. And, OK, Magnus has played maybe the most tempting option for White. Artemiev, for sure, he would have calculated this in advance, or he should have looked at it in advance.
Looking at him, he seems a little bit nervy, and OK, he steps forward with his queen. And how is he planning to meet Magnus's threat, which is just to push his a-pawn forward and attack the knight?
All those very powerful pieces stacked together?
Yeah, it does visually look impressive, and that's why the computer loves it so much. But Black's position is still rock solid. After all, Artemiev hasn't done anything wrong. And, OK, so we have seen some moves on the board.
Let's just show this as well, because White's pawn did push forward, Black's knight as well, jumping into White's half. We predicted this might be one option, and then Magnus actually threatened checkmate in one move, using the queen and pawn together to try to get to the Black king. So checkmate threat on the board. Artemiev said, OK, I've got to block it up. He pushed his pawn forward, bypassing White's pawn, but this guy is going to be a thorn in Black's side forever now.
And talking about tricky situations, Artemiev has made maybe a mysterious rook move and tucking his rook on the c-line. And I suspect that the idea is that if the white knight jumps in to attack the queen, that the queen won't move, and that there might be a counterattack instead.
Wow, OK, interesting. might well backfire for white. It's the most tempting move in the position, but it might backfire. And that's why Magnus, wow, this one wasn't even on my radar, but he's put his king in the corner. And the reason he's done this actually is not necessarily because the king's actually safer on this square. There is an open line in front of it.
The memories from the season so far with only the tour final left.
Yes. You can ask us what he really thinks of us, what he really thinks of the players.
How hard it is.
OK, we have some extra moves on the board.
OK, so black's king tucking itself away in the corner, just like white's has done. So makes a lot of sense. Also out of the eye line of the white queen. Meanwhile, Magnus continuing the plan he initiated on the last turn, bringing his rook across. Now there is definitely a threat against that black knight. White is threatening that knight 3 times.
He puts the knight. I mean, maybe white can be thinking about making a sacrifice with his own... Oh, OK, I was thinking about sacrificing the knight for Magnus, and Artemiev just says, hey, there's a pawn up for grabs. Why don't you take it?
In the circumstances. OK, white's knight dropping back. That is surprising. The knight came from here just, what was it, 3 moves ago? OK, what is Magnus's idea? Maybe he wants to start initiating play in the centre of the board. Maybe he thinks that the knight has done its job. OK, we will find out because black's rook has found its most natural square, the 2 rooks teaming up together. Just in case the position ever opens up, it's definitely a game of knights right now. White's bishop is a bit of a bystander. And OK, Magnus, this is strange, this is mysterious. Maybe he thinks there's no way to improve the position. He takes a timeout and pushes this pawn. It looks irrelevant, this move, but I guess the idea is that he's freed up his rook. They're not 100% sure, so they're just biding their time and waiting. Yeah. And in the current position, that has given black the opportunity to re-centralise his knight.
Yes, very much a wait-and-see game. Now it's up to Magnus to come up with a plan of improvement. OK, and he steps forward with his rook.
Is this simply to bring the other rook then behind it?
Potentially. Tag chess champs. If you had your kingdom, who would be the king and queen?
C line, all 4 rooks. That would be maximum tension. But if Magnus is playing in a more... OK, he does this. This is just... autopilot, essentially.
Yeah.
Why bother calculating any lines when you can improve a piece? Contact and conflict against your opponent's pieces while you have one bad piece.
Ooh, talking about conflict, David.
Now
you mentioned it. You mentioned it right at the correct time. Now Artemiev has made his move. He's a little bit low on the clock. And, OK, the big question is, how is Magnus going to react to this?
Continue manoeuvring. He has to move the white queen, white knight or white bishop if he doesn't want to take that black pawn. OK, he does move the white knight. So, as Jovanka mentioned, attacking black's rook, that has forced a trade of knights, and white's bishop captures. So now black's pawn cannot really, well, it can step forward to attack the white queen, but it won't be a double attack. White's queen will just move out the way.
I just don't think black is much better here. I just think it's a position.
Chances for both sides.
Exactly, and that's what we want.
Yeah, I guess black's hopes rely upon the fact that he has queen and knight, and queen and knight against queen and bishop tends to be a pretty decent combo. Now I expect white's queen to, just pin this black pawn.
Step to the side. And white has a lot of compensation for this ruined pawn structure there on the right in terms of control of the light squares.
And also, in a potential endgame, if the queens do disappear, if the rooks disappear, black's king heading towards the centre. And look at this. Actually, earlier, white's king went to the corner, then the black king copied. Now, black's king has gone back. Now, white's king has gone back as well. Both players definitely playing copycat, just mimicking each other there.
Do you think this is an indirect draw offer?
No.
No.
The kings are just much better here than they previously were.
OK.
Along the diagonal that both the queens sit on. So black is free to maybe trade if he wants to in the centre of the board later on.
What kind of endgames would you have in the back of your pocket?
Favours the bishop with pawns on both sides of the board, but the pawn structure is very unorthodox. And, OK, we do see a trade from Magnus's side. So he's the one to initiate things. And Artemiev, he's saying, please get off all the rooks. Please, let's get off the queens. OK.
He has to, because his king is in so much danger.
Yeah.
OK, so now a trade of rooks, and we're going to see I was going to say trade of queens, but I spoke too soon.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit magical at times. OK, queen steps back. Did you notice? He puts it on the same diagonal as his king. Artemiev is playing in a defensive mode, but this is what he needed to do.
Is badly placed. If black gets 2 or 3 moves to put that knight on a better square, I prefer black's position. But right now, Magnus has that time. He has that small window of opportunity to create threats himself. And the white queen actually swung across to the centre. Queens are great in central squares, but it had ideas on dark square diagonal to go to the top corner of the board, actually. So black has blocked off any entry squares into his half with that pawn push. Usually isolated pawns, the idea is to blockade them and then start attacking them.
But David, come and look at this. Magnus is trying to take a wrecking ball to Artemiev's pawn side. This should be a new word.
Yeah.
Pawn structure is what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And,
so he was actually giving up a pawn temporarily, Magnus. He was just trying to open up some lines for the white queen to use. I mentioned that the white queen needs to use a different angle, just a different avenue of attack. And now there has been one line opened up, the H line in the corner. So white's queen could just swing across and try to come up to the top of the board and get to the black king from behind. So there we go. The white queen does use this new line.
And meanwhile, the black king steps forward and Magnus needs no asking twice. He goes forward with his queen. So there is a big threat in the position, actually, for the queen to potentially swing across all the way to the left side and start attacking that pawn on A7.
This last move, Jovanka, I'm slightly surprised because black has dropped a pawn.
It has.
The black queen is attacking white's bishop, but you can ignore it and counterattack. And right now, the most obvious move to me, I'm trying to work out whether black has some annoying checks, but I was going to say white's queen could have taken a black pawn on the f6 square and attacked the black knight.
But David, look, it looks like a killer move on the board. I mean, it might not be killer, but it certainly looks incredibly dangerous because it defends the bishop. And at the same time, there is a huge threat in the position of the queen stepping one square backwards and deliver a potential checkmate. Yeah, it's a lolly's mate.
Lolly's mate. It's a nice lolly, you just get it out.
And well, with that in the air, and 12 seconds for Artemiev.
Yeah, oh, he steps forward.
I think he had to try something like this, Jovanka, just in practical terms, because he had only 20 seconds. It's not going to be 100% easy to try.
OK, and the check is on the board, and now the king, no other option, has to step forward. So Artemiev, make that move instantly.
But Stockfish says no, that one loses for black.
I was tempted to go, oh, he's gone into the centre. No, the wrong way. I thought he had to go attack the bishop. OK, so here...
I'm saying this is close to lost.
Yeah.
This looks like it's...
not just in one way either. White has several opportunities here. OK, he does find the safest opportunity. White's queen could have gone and grabbed a pawn. That was not human, though, too greedy. So he stepped back. The white bishop guards the white king. A
deadly threat of white pushing one pawn forward and delivering a David and Goliath checkmate.
You know, all those checkmate names, Jovanka. And, OK, after this last black pawn move, he has created an escape route for the black king. Black's king can run back to safety now. But white just grabbed a pawn. Magnus now, he has a very strong passed pawn, only 2 squares away from becoming a new queen. And Artemiev knows that time is running out, both on the clock and on the board. He has to go for checks. He's trying to get to the white king, but white's king will find safety on a light square. It will run up the board, just like black's has done, and there won't be any more checks. So Artemiev retreating his queen, but all white needs to do now is move the queen out of the way, give a check. There we go.
Yeah.
And now white's pawn, that beautiful A pawn, Anna, she's going to become a queen. He knows that he's just a move or two away now from clinching it. He can push that pawn. Maybe he can move the white queen first. For example, you can just trade queens off the board right now if you want to play completely safe chess. But no, he goes for a new queen first.
He pushes the queen. The only move that Artemiev can play is to deliver a check. And now the king is as safe as houses on that D2 square. And unfortunately, Anna is just simply going to go to the 8th row and become a queen. OK, we have a tricky move from Artemiev. He puts his knight to c6 and hopefully, you know, has his finger crossed that maybe the Anna will drop.
Yeah, so white's pawn now, its promotion squares covered. Black's queen is protecting it from behind, but Magnus just grabbing another pawn. He actually created a pin along the 6th rank towards the black king. He's forced the black king even further away right now. And with this last move, Carlsen attacking the black queen. He's forced the black queen to take that white pawn. Anna has dropped off, but she has given up her life for a knight. And white is a whole knight up, and that has caused Artemiev to resign.
Wow, the hero of the game, Anna, wins Magnus Carlsen the first game of today. Artemiev shaking his head.